My golden boy brother slept with my wife behind my back. He thought our family would protect him. But what I revealed changed everything. I have a younger brother, Caleb, who has despised me my entire life. If you're wondering whether it was out of jealousy, you're wrong. I wasn't the favorite child, he was, so he had no reason to feel jealous. Let me provide some context. My mother always pampered my younger brother. He was the golden child in our family. She would cook his meals, do his laundry, and even ask me to help with his schoolwork. I was expected to assist simply because he was family, but the same courtesy was never extended to me. I came to accept this, as I was quite independent. Perhaps it was partly my fault for accommodating his wants and needs without reciprocation. He never lent a hand when I needed help and only reached out when he wanted something from me. I was a quiet, introverted kid who liked to study and keep to myself, while Caleb was exactly like our father, rough and loud. I tend to be straightforward and honest, not sugarcoating things and saying it like it is. I believe my mother might have developed a negative perception of me as a result. Caleb was everyone's favorite in our family. I didn't mind this when we were growing up, but trouble arose when he found ways to bully or mock me for being different. He would taunt me about my height or the fact that I wore glasses. He would sneak into my room and try to read my diary, then complain to my mother about anything I had written. I would yell at him and complain to my parents about him invading my privacy, but they would laugh it off, telling me it wasn't a big deal. Caleb did worse things, like nearly breaking my glasses and putting nasty things in my food. Once, he even put small stones in my cereal, but luckily, I found them before they could damage my teeth. I told my mother, but she brushed it off, saying, "This is how brothers bond." Every time we fought, Caleb would insult me, deliberately targeting my insecurities. We attended the same school, so he knew I was being bullied by a few kids. Instead of supporting me, he joined them, calling me names like ugly loser or hairy monkey and encouraging the bullies to physically harm me because, according to him, I was just a big failure. Another time, we had a fight about something trivial, I can't recall what, but it ended with him telling me to kill myself. I could brush off other insults, but that one hurt deeply because I was struggling with my mental health at the time. I'm doing better now, but it was devastating to hear my own brother say he wanted me to die. Our father was often at work, and my mother didn't seem to care much. She even scolded me once, claiming it was my fault for provoking Caleb. Things got progressively worse. In high school, Caleb attempted to burn my hair, and shockingly, my mother sided with him, insisting he was just playing. Who plays like that, seriously? Fortunately, my father eventually took my side and pointed out that they had serious issues. He threatened to call the police on Caleb. This was an eye-opening moment for my brother because, until then, he had never been reprimanded for his actions. He was taken aback, and my father continued, telling him enough was enough and that he needed to start respecting his older brother. Later, my father came into my room and talked to me. I had never expected him to support me because he always told Caleb how similar they were, which was true. He explained that he had patiently waited for years, thinking Caleb was just being an immature kid, but he was slowly realizing that Caleb was becoming a bully. When I heard my father say this, I felt so validated that I nearly broke down in tears. I confessed everything Caleb had done to me over the years and even opened up about the bullying at school. My father was shocked that I was going through so much. The next day, he spoke to the school principal to ensure my bullies faced severe consequences if they continued. That evening, he enrolled me in mixed martial arts at our local gym, telling me I needed to man up and stand up to bullies. I'll admit, a nerdy kid like me trying to learn to fight must have been laughable to watch. However, like everything in my life, I'm focused when I want to learn something. I carved out time for my studies to work out daily and attend martial arts classes. Not to brag, but it completely changed my life and physique. One day, Caleb was at it again. He had stolen my pocket money, which we earned by helping our parents with chores. I had been saving for a while, but Caleb sneaked into my room and took it. I caught him as he was about to cycle off with his friends. I firmly told him to return my money, as he knew stealing was wrong. Caleb snickered, taunting that all I could do was run to Daddy for help. I don't know what came over me, but I punched him hard in the face. He fell backward, stunned into silence. I picked him up, took my money from his trouser pocket, and threw him back to the ground. Caleb started crying loudly like a baby. It was comical to see a teenage boy sobbing, but my mother came running out, hearing her baby boy. She helped him up and demanded to know what happened. When she learned I had fought him, she was surprised and began reprimanding me, saying that as the older brother, I should teach Caleb better things. Caleb seemed to enjoy seeing me chastised. My mother complained to my father about how I had beat Caleb up and needed to be controlled. My father grimly asked both of us to explain ourselves. I told him how Caleb had stolen the money I had worked hard to save, while Caleb tried to justify it, saying he needed it for a date and that, as his brother, I should help him. My father told Caleb he was lucky I only punched him, as anyone else would have called the police for theft. He emphasized that Caleb had no right to take others' belongings without consent. Caleb didn't like that and threw a tantrum, likely hoping our mother would side with him, but my father remained firm. When Caleb realized I wouldn't be punished, he screamed how much he hated me, then ran to his room and locked himself in. Since that incident, Caleb kept his distance from me. He finally realized he could no longer bully me, and even our father wasn't supporting his antics. For the first time, I felt we were equals. Though he couldn't physically hurt me anymore, he would still say nasty things when our parents weren't around. It got worse as he grew older. Each year, he seemed angrier with a shorter fuse. If I approached him, he would ignore me and walk away, muttering nerd or loser under his breath. If he needed to communicate, he went through our mother, who relayed the message. I questioned her about why Caleb couldn't just talk to me directly, and she implored me to be more understanding. I wasn't sure if this was just puberty and I had to wait it out or if he truly hated me. I could handle his comments over the years, but it reached a point where I wanted to move out to escape him. I asked my mother countless times to mediate a family conversation, but she refused, saying she didn't want to get involved. I even asked her opinion on why Caleb treated me this way, but she brushed it off. Eventually, I attended my dream university, as I was an excellent student and qualified for a scholarship. My father threw a party for me, and my mother seemed proud. Caleb, however, remained aloof, barely acknowledging my achievements. The day I left for university was a mix of excitement for the future and relief to escape the toxic home environment. My first few months at university were liberating. I made new friends, enjoyed my classes, and started building a life free from the oppressive atmosphere of my childhood. The constant fear of Caleb's verbal attacks lifted, and I found peace. I began dating my wife, Karen, in our second year of university. A friend introduced us at a frat party, and we clicked immediately. Coming from a religious family, having children outside marriage was unacceptable. However, we discovered Karen was pregnant in our final year, prompting us to marry soon after graduation. Our wedding was a small but peaceful ceremony, and our parents were happy for us. At that moment, I believed Karen was the love of my life. I always valued monogamy, one woman to come home to for the long haul. Despite other women showing interest over the years, I never pursued anything, as I was genuinely content in my marriage. Karen was my dream girl, and I never wanted to hurt her. However, I discovered she was unfaithful twice during our marriage, once in an on and off affair with a married coworker that lasted a few years, and another time in a fling with an ex from high school when she visited her family. Some might call me foolish, and looking back, I can't entirely deny it. After periods of separation in both cases, I chose to forgive her. I didn't want to raise our child in a broken home, and I believed we could overcome these challenges. We were young when the coworker affair happened, so I attributed it to youthful mistakes. For a while, things seemed fine. I could never fully trust her, but I tried to push aside my doubts, knowing that if I chose forgiveness, I had to move forward with a clean slate. It's been 4 years since her second infidelity, and I felt I made the right decision by giving her a chance to prove she wanted our marriage. Karen seemed to have changed, and we were genuinely happy, with plans for our family's future. However, 3 months ago, my reality shattered again with an incident far worse than the others. Karen revealed she had been sleeping with someone for some time and suggested our son might not be mine. Her words felt like the ground had been pulled from under me. Shock, betrayal, and disbelief overwhelmed me as I struggled to process the enormity of her disclosure. In the following days, I asked why she kept such a secret and how she could do something so devastating. Her reaction was cold and indifferent, almost unbothered by the pain she caused. Her vague responses left me with more questions than answers. I continued pressing Karen for the truth, feeling I deserved to know the father of the child I had been raising. She finally admitted it was Caleb. My eyes widened in shock as I asked what she meant. Karen explained that she and Caleb became friends when I introduced her to my family during Thanksgiving, and she stayed until New Year's. I remembered Caleb, usually cold to me, being polite and warm toward her. I was glad, not wanting Karen to feel unwelcome. She wanted to be accepted by my family, so she spent significant time with my mother. She noticed Caleb and I weren't close and asked about it. I opened up about my childhood relationship with Caleb, explaining we might never repair it due to his unresolved feelings. Karen understood but began including Caleb in our outings, perhaps hoping we'd warm up to each other. If we went to a movie, she'd invite Caleb, and we'd watch whatever he wanted. During this time, Caleb and I exchanged a few words, a significant improvement from his years of silent treatment. Karen and Caleb would hang out and play video games, but I never thought much of it. Karen later revealed that Caleb opened up about his struggles and a recent breakup, appearing vulnerable. They struck up a friendship, and he would occasionally flirt with her when I wasn't around. One thing led to another, and she couldn't control herself. The vision of my wife and brother together made me sick. Karen claimed she felt guilty and fled afterward, returning home abruptly. I recalled her insisting she had to leave before New Year's, despite my attempts to convince her to stay. When classes resumed, she was back to her cheerful self, so I never questioned it. 2 weeks later, We found out she was pregnant. Karen admitted she didn't know whether the child was mine or Caleb's and had no way to confirm. Since I was stepping up, and she viewed me as the more dependable brother, she chose to stay with me, leading to our marriage. My world felt like it was crashing down. The son I had loved and spent countless hours with might not be mine. I asked if she was still sleeping with Caleb, and she nodded slowly. She explained they stayed in touch because their chemistry was undeniable, sneaking off to hotels when she lied about working overtime. Half her business trips were romantic getaways with him. I asked why she stayed married to me if she wanted Caleb. She said she didn't want to be the one to end our marriage and, seeing what a wonderful father I was, chose to stay. In her words, she made a mistake and didn't know when to stop. I told her I was glad she told the truth and that I was packing to move out. Karen cried, begging for forgiveness, saying I was supposed to scream at her, yet I was calmly planning my next move. I remained silent, packing clothes into my suitcase. She insisted that if I loved her, I should fight for her, claiming mistakes happen in every marriage. When I didn't respond, she argued our son would suffer in a divorce, as children shouldn't grow up in a broken home. I reminded her I might not be the father, reducing her to tears. She accused me of being cruel for walking away when I had been there since his birth. It seemed Karen believed nothing could make me leave our marriage. Perhaps it was partly my fault for letting so much slide in the past. While I still loved her, it stemmed more from believing we had a son together in our long history since college. Karen claimed it wasn't too late to work things out, but I struggled to believe her and felt I had no patience left. Trust was a major issue, and her words felt empty. Even if I forgave her, I could never forget she slept with my brother. I believe people can make mistakes and be forgiven, as we're all flawed, but this crossed a line. I left her crying on the doorstep and checked into a hotel. The next day, I went to my parents and told them everything about Karen's affair with Caleb and how they had been sleeping together for years. Their shock was evident. My mother, true to form, initially defended Caleb, insisting her boy would never do this to his brother. Determined to expose the truth, I asked them to remain silent while I called Caleb in their presence. I told them not to make a sound, as I wanted him to think it was a private conversation, hoping he'd let his guard down. When Caleb answered, I confronted him about his affair with my wife. He denied it vehemently at first, but when I said Karen had admitted everything, he blamed her, calling her characterless. He claimed it wasn't his fault if women were attracted to him and boasted he was the better-looking brother. I told him I would expose him to everyone. Caleb mocked me, saying no one would believe me because he was the golden child. I scoffed at his arrogance and thanked him for confirming the truth, as our parents had heard everything. Caleb went quiet, then stammered, trying to explain himself. My mother, still grappling with shock, demanded an explanation. He offered a feeble defense, blaming everyone but himself and desperately trying to shift the blame to Karen. I saw my mother, once protective of her favored son, now feeling disappointment and anger. In that moment, I felt a strange sense of vindication. For years, I had endured Caleb's torment, and now the truth was laid bare. As Caleb's words faltered, my father, usually reserved, couldn't contain his disappointment. He asked me to pass the phone and unleashed on Caleb. What you've done is not just a betrayal of your brother but a betrayal of this family, he said, his tone heavy with disapproval. You slept with your brother's wife and continued after they married. Your actions have consequences and have irreversibly damaged our trust in you. I raised you to value family, loyalty, and decency. What you've shown goes against everything I've tried to instill. He paused, letting his words sink in. The disregard for your brother's feelings, the lack of respect for his marriage, it's unacceptable. You've not only hurt him but tarnished the bonds that hold us together. Your mother and I are partly to blame for what you've become, but we will no longer let you get away with this behavior. Starting today, I'm cutting you off from your college funds. You can figure out your university fees on your own. I won't fund your lifestyle anymore. You think it makes you a man to sleep with married women? Let's see what happens when you don't have my money to rely on. I maintained a composed demeanor, though I initially wanted to scream at Caleb. Watching my father punish him was the ultimate vindication. I had exposed Caleb's true nature, and he had underestimated the consequences. Caleb protested, but my father ended the call, shutting down his excuses. My mother hugged me, a rare moment after years of distance. In that embrace, there was unspoken understanding and support. She apologized for not believing me all this time. My 14-year-old self could never have imagined this moment of vindication and maternal embrace. My father helped me find a good lawyer for my divorce. Karen and her lawyer tried to fight dirty, demanding alimony since I earned more, but her affair worked heavily in my favor. We also conducted a paternity test, which confirmed Caleb was the father of our son. I can't describe how painful this news was, worse than learning of Karen's infidelity. I was devastated that the son I raised wasn't mine. However, I decided to stay strong. Karen begged me to keep visiting our son, saying he shouldn't be punished, but I couldn't bear to see him. He reminded me of Caleb, and I hated it. After my divorce was finalized, I moved into my own bachelor pad. It felt surreal living alone, as I had married young and never lived independently. However, my independence helped me adapt quickly, and I honestly loved it. 2 weeks ago, my father called to say he was considering changing his will to leave Caleb nothing. My father is extremely stubborn, and once he made up his mind to cut ties with Caleb, he kept his word. Caleb tried reaching out to our parents and even showed up at their doorstep begging for forgiveness, but he wasn't allowed inside. My mother, who usually caves to Caleb's tantrums, also seems done with him, though it must hurt her most. Throughout all this, Caleb never texted me to apologize, showing he didn't regret his actions, only the consequences of being cut off. My father told me he would leave everything to me to ensure Caleb couldn't protest later, giving him only $1. My eyes widened, as my father had worked hard his whole life, and his assets, retirement fund, and life insurance totaled nearly $1 million. The only clause was that if he passed before my mother, she could live in their house, though ownership would transfer to me. I didn't mind, as I'd want to care for my mother until her last days. Somehow, Caleb learned about this and, unable to reach our parents, called me yesterday to mend things. He said he was struggling with college, and after Karen learned the paternity results, she had been pestering him for child support. He claimed he had no money, was looking for part-time jobs, and couldn't find anything. He begged me to talk to our family for a fresh start, as he needed help. I laughed and told him I was done with him, saying he should have thought about this before sleeping with my wife and getting her pregnant. Caleb argued I was being unfair, claiming Karen was also to blame. I agreed, reminding him I had divorced her, and she and her child were now his responsibility, not mine. Caleb raised his voice, but I cut him off, reminding him he was no longer the favored child but the black sheep who slept with his brother's wife. He began crying, saying everyone, including our grandparents and relatives, had turned on him. That was true, but it was no longer my concern. I told him we were done and to never call me again, as I was no longer his brother. Since then, I've replayed the conversation in my head. Though I hate my brother, I had never heard him cry, at least not since we were kids. I won't lie, it hurt a bit to hear him so helpless. So, I'm here to ask, should I talk to our parents about him, or would I be an a-hole if I don't? I'm sorry to say this, but I don't feel comfortable raising another man's child. This isn't a stepson scenario. I was led to believe he was my son, only to discover he was my brother's. I'm hurt and have cried over it for days, but I avoid contact with Henry because I don't want Karen in my life. If I interact with her child, she'll find a way to re-enter my life, and I need my own space. Call me cruel or selfish, but I can't see him again, at least not for a very long time. Most of you correctly guessed that my mother told Caleb about my father changing his will, prompting his call as a last resort. I confronted her in front of my father, and she broke down, saying I had punished Caleb enough and that he had learned his lesson. My father firmly told her that if she thought Caleb's actions were forgivable, he could no longer stay married to her, as he could never forgive Caleb's betrayal. His threats seemed to silence her. My father made it clear that if she ever contacted Caleb and we found out, she could pack her bags and leave. As I said, my father is stubborn. Hopefully, my mother will learn from her mistakes. My relationship with my parents has improved. My father and I go golfing every weekend, and he treats me more like a buddy than a son. My mother, though she misses Caleb, has stayed away from him. I heard from my cousin that Caleb was asking everyone for money and had to drop out of college when he couldn't afford his fees. He and Karen are living together, and he works as a part-time mechanic. Apparently, they're raising Henry together, which I suppose is good. I never bring up Caleb with my parents, and neither do they. For those asking, I'm doing quite well. I was promoted at my job 2 months ago, significantly improving my salary. I haven't been dating, as I need time and space to heal. I've started therapy, so we'll see how that goes.